U.S. panic, 100,000 Russian troops ready to fight on Ukraine border. Fears grow of imminent invasion of Ukraine as Russia accused of massing troops on border. Around 100,000 Russian troops have descended on the country's border with Ukraine amid fears of an imminent invasion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed Western countries have shared intelligence about Moscow military movement after the U.S. warned of a potential attack. Mr. Zelensky said in a speech on his website, "I hope the whole world can now clearly see who really wants peace, and who is concentrating nearly 100,000 soldiers at our border." But the Kremlin has hit back at the suggestions and instead said there is increasing activity in the region by the NATO Transatlantic Alliance, reported The Sun. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry previously put the number of Russian troops near the border at 90,000 on November 3. It follows the release of shocking video which appeared to show Russian tanks, armored vehicles and soldiers massing near the city of Voronezh, 300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The vehicles, which include a battalion of T-80 main battle tanks, are understood to have been brought down from the Moscow area. Other clips show tanks being carried by train close to the city, while further footage shows a line of military troop-carrying trucks traveling down a highway in Bryansk around 160 kilometers from the border. Washington, London concerned at Russian moves. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken described the White House as being very concerned about the potential attempted rehash of Russia's 2014 invasion of Ukraine, which used to be part of the Soviet Union. He said due to the country's history of aggressive action and current uncertainty, we have real concerns about what we're seeing in the present. But Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed Western media reports that Moscow has intentions to invade Ukraine as a hollow and unfounded attempt to incite tensions. He said, "Russia doesn't threaten anyone. The movement of troops on our territory shouldn't be a cause for anyone's concern." British sources said the UK government was also anxious about the intelligence, and there was twitchiness and anxiety among officials. And Britain's most senior military officer admitted he too is worried about the unfolding threat from Russia in Eastern Europe. UK Chief of Defence Staff General Sir Nick Carter warned that the UK must be on guard over Vladimir Putin's intentions with Ukraine and tensions with Belarus. The Russian leader has come under fire for igniting a migrant crisis in the Poland-Belarus border to destabilize Europe. His country deployed 2 nuclear bombers to patrol the skies over Belarus amid the bitter border dispute. But Mr. Putin today insisted he was ready to help resolve the growing crisis by all means if, of course, anything would depend on us. Russia is a key ally of Belarus, which the European Union says is responsible for flying in thousands of migrants, most of them from the Middle East, and pushing them to try to cross the EU border illegally into Poland. Russia denies Moscow and Minsk were involved, and Mr. Putin blamed the West for the crisis, referring to conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Fear of Russian knockout blow. A 600-strong task force of British Special Forces, including SAS commandos and soldiers from the Parachute Regiment, are being prepared to deploy to Ukraine to help secure the situation. Sir Nick told BBC presenter Andrew Marr that Britain stands behind Poland under the circumstances, which remain tense as Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko demanded Russia send him nuclear-capable missiles. And it is suspected the shadowy hand of Russia is playing a key role, further fueling fears that Mr. Putin may finally launch an attack. There is unease that Russia may rely on blitzkrieg-style assault to storm its way across the country. The tactic, made famous by Hitler's armored divisions invading Belgium and France in 1940, would seek to hit a knockout blow before Ukraine, and the West could react and redraw the front line, similar to what happened in Crimea. The world is worried Putin is about to invade Ukraine. Here's why. President Vladimir Putin is being watched closely by experts and officials who fear Russia might be planning a military escalation with its neighbor Ukraine. Tens of thousands of Russian troops have reportedly gathered at the border with Ukraine, and experts fear Russia could be about to stage a repeat of its 2014 invasion and annexation of the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea, which prompted global outrage and sanctions on Moscow. We all should be very worried, to be honest, I do share this assessment, Michael Baranowski, director and senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund's Warsaw office, told CNBC when asked if Russia could be about to embark upon military action against Ukraine, describing Russia's highly tense relationship with Ukraine as being a conflict under the threshold of war. This assessment is shared by many here in Warsaw and in Washington, D.C., he told CNBC's Hadley Gamble on Wednesday, adding we are seeing very significant buildup in threats on the border with Ukraine. So it's really a key moment for the West to step up pressure against Putin. Last week, U.S. officials reportedly warned their European counterparts that Russia could be weighing a potential invasion of Ukraine. The defense ministry in Kiev said in early November that about 90,000 troops were massing on the border, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said last week that there were nearly 100,000 Russian soldiers at the border, Reuters reported. For his part, when asked whether Russia is plotting a military invasion in Ukraine, Putin dismissed such a notion as alarmist in an interview with Rossiya 1 last weekend. Russia has also sought to play down the movements of its troops, with Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, saying last week that the movement of troops on our territory shouldn't be a cause for anyone's concern, the Associated Press reported. CNBC has contacted Russia's defense ministry for further comment. Concerns over Russia's possible next move when it comes to Ukraine, which used to be part of the Soviet Union before its dissolution in 1991, come against a wider backdrop of deteriorating relations between Russia and its allies on one side and Europe and the US on the other. Tensions have emerged on a number of fronts, from energy and political meddling to cyber warfare and migrants, with Russia accused of helping Belarus to orchestrate a growing migrant crisis on the EU's doorstep. Russia expert Timothy Ash, a senior emerging markets sovereign strategist at Blue Bay Asset Management, noted Tuesday that it feels like Putin is bracing for war with Ukraine. He has the motive, opportunity and weapon. His motive, Ash said, was that he wants Ukraine, as he never accepted its loss in 91 with the collapse of the USSR, and sees Ukraine as central to his vision of Greater Russia. The opportunity, Ash said, was that the West is weak, divided and lacks focus. Biden is focused on China, Europe on gas, migrants, and the Balkans. Ukraine is politically weak. And Putin's potential weapon? Well, an invasion force of several 100,000 in / around Ukraine, including forces already in Donbass and Crimea. Add in gas, migrants, political intrigue, cyber, space, Ash said. International concerns. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said last week that Washington was concerned by reports of unusual Russian military activity near Russia's border with Ukraine, warning that should Russia commit further aggressive acts against Ukraine, we are committed, and Germany is committed, to taking appropriate action. He did not state what that action might entail. European leaders have continued to voice their concerns this week. Germany's and France's respective foreign ministers, Heiko Maas and Jean-Yves Le Drian, issued a statement Tuesday pledging their unwavering support for the independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. Against the background of renewed concerns about Russian troop and material movements near Ukraine, we call on Russia to exercise restraint and to provide transparent information about its military activities. Any new attempt to undermine Ukraine's territorial integrity would have dire consequences, the ministers said. Meanwhile, NATO's Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, said Monday on Twitter that the military alliance was closely monitoring the large and unusual concentrations of Russian forces close to Ukraine's borders. We call on Russia to be transparent, prevent escalation and reduce tensions. Meanwhile, France's President, Emmanuel Macron, told Putin on Monday that his country was ready to defend Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. But just how far the EU and US would go to defend Ukraine is uncertain. Last week, US President Joe Biden and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen discussed Ukraine, and said they fully supported Ukraine's territorial integrity, but did not mention how far they would go to protect the country. Ukraine has said the West must send a strong message to Moscow to not take any aggressive action. If we continue to have strong Western partners standing by us, and they take resolute actions, this will help us to prevent the war and to prevent the bloodshed, and this is what we are now focused on, Ukraine's Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba, told the BBC's Today program Wednesday. Tensions on other fronts. Russia has been accused of helping to stir up another crisis on the border between Belarus and Poland, where masses of mainly Middle Eastern migrants have gathered in a bid to enter the EU. Putin's ally Belarus has been accused of weaponizing migrants and contriving the migrant crisis, essentially by inviting migrants to the country in the knowledge that they will then try to enter the EU via Poland, in order to destabilize the bloc and to distract from Russia's troop buildup. Belarus denies it has engineered the migrant crisis and Russia denies any involvement, with Putin's press secretary telling reporters last week that Russia, like other countries, is trying to get involved in resolving the situation. Another source of underlying tension is energy, with Russia accused of orchestrating an energy price crisis in Europe in recent months by withholding supplies as it awaits the regulatory green light for the contentious Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which will send its gas supplies to Europe.